Vishnupad Paramhamsa Privajakacarya Astotra Sat Abhay Charnaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya, BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramhamsa Privajakacarya Astotra Sat Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदी। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Answers by citing the Lord's version. And today we have text 12, which has a short purport, so I will read it by myself, and then 13 we can do together. Okay, Maharaj. So text 12 I will read it by myself, and then 13 we can do together. प्रवाल वैदुर्य मृणाल वर्चसः परिस्फुरत कुंडल मौलिमालिना. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charnaravind Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Some of them are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. So the short purport is, there are some inhabitants who have attained the liberation of Sarupya, or possessing bodily features like those of the personality of Godhead. The Vaidurya diamond is especially meant for the personality of Godhead, but one who achieves the liberation of bodily equality with the Lord is especially favored with such diamonds on his body. Text 13. Brajishnuvirya parito virajate lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam vidyotmana pramadot madhyubhihi Savidyud abravalibhir yatha nabha. Brajishnubirya parito virajate Lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam Vidyatmana pramadotamadyubhihi Savidyud abravalibhir yatha nabha. Brajishnubirya parito virajate Lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam विद्योत्माना प्रमदोत्तमद्युतिभिः सविद्युदभ्रावलिभिर्यथा नभा. Please chant. Panto virajate lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam vidyatmana pramadottamadibi savidyudabhravalibhir yatha nabha. Brajishnu-birya parito virajate lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam vidyotmana pramadottamadibi savidyudabhravalibhir yatha nabha. Brajishnu-birya parito virajate lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam vidyotmana pramadottamadibi savidyudabhravalibhir yatha nabha. Mataji. Brajishnu-birya parito virajate lasad vimana valibhir mahatmanam vidyatmana pramadottamadibi savidyudabhravalibhir yatha nabha. Synonyms: Brajishnu-bhi, by the glowing, Ya, the Vaikuntha lokas, Parita, surrounded by, Virajate, thus situated, Lasat, brilliant, Vimana, airplanes, Avlibhihi, assemblage, Maha Atmanam, of the great devotees of the Lord, Vidyatmanaha, beautiful like lightning, Pramada, ladies, Uttama, celestial, Adyubhihi, by complexion, Savidyut, with electric lightning, Abhravalibhihi, with clouds in the sky, Yatha, as it were, Nabha, the sky. Translation: the Vaikuntha planets are also surrounded by various airplanes, all glowing and brilliantly situated. These airplanes belong to the great Mahatmas or devotees of the Lord. The ladies are as beautiful as lightning because of their celestial complexions. And all these combined together appear just like the sky decorated with both clouds and lightning. Purport: it appears that in the Vaikuntha planets there are also airplanes brilliantly glowing, and they are occupied by the great devotees of the Lord, with ladies of celestial beauty, as brilliant as lightning. As there are airplanes, so there must be different types of carriages like airplanes. But they may not be driven by machines as we have experienced in this world. Because everything is of the same nature of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, the airplanes and carriages are of the same quality as Brahman. Although there is nothing except Brahman, one should not mistakenly think that there is only void and no variegatedness. Thinking like that is due to a poor fund of knowledge. Otherwise, no one would have such a misconception of voidness in Brahman. As there are airplanes, ladies, and gentlemen, so there must be cities and houses and everything else just suitable to the particular planets. One should not carry the idea of imperfection from this world to the transcendental world and not take into consideration the nature of the atmosphere as completely free from the influence of time, etc., as described previously. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a very beautiful section where Lord Brahma is sharing his realization, his vision of the spiritual world, and we are getting to know the inside story, how the residents there look like, and what kind of activities go on there. So, continuing from the previous words is describing how there are airplanes and the residents, they are so beautiful looking, they are decorated with flower garlands, with earrings, and they are like effulgent. And it mentions in text 12, it says, it's talking about Sarupya Mukti, how they have similar bodily features as the Lord. So there are different kinds of liberation one can attain. There is mukti and there is vimukti. So in the pastime of Mother Yashoda binding Krishna, described about vimukti there, is higher than just a general liberation. Means someone attaining Brahman. And then there are these other categories like Sarupya, Samipya, Sarshti. So there are all these 5 different categories, and in this one we are hearing how the residents, they have similar bodily features as the Lord. In the next purport it mentions about how there are devotees, they have airplanes. Now we know, like modern scientists, they talk about like these sightings of different flying objects and this and that. But someone who has heard from Srimad Bhagavatam or who knows Srimad Bhagavatam, they are aware like there are so many things going on. And they are aware there used to be interplanetary travels before, which are not seen so often because the consciousness is not so advanced of human beings, and but still there are some who are spiritually so advanced they can understand these things, and by hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam we can also learn these things. One point I kind of stood out from the previous verse, actually text 10, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning how why people in material consciousness, they cannot understand or see these things. So Srila Prabhupada, he says there, the material body is overcast with 5 kinds of material conditions, namely ignorance, material conception, attachment, hatred, and absorption in material activities. So to become free from that, here Lord Brahma, by his personal example, he is showing the way to get out of such conditions is by performing bhakti yoga. And we can see how he is revealing all these details about there's so much variety in spiritual world. It's not that everything becomes null and void after you get liberated. Like many of the impersonalists, they give this example of how a river flows into the ocean and it becomes one with the ocean. But Srila Prabhupada, he mentions in the purport in the Bhagavad Gita, that's in the purport to 1854. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So, what kind of person can attain bhakti is someone who has become free from these 5 material conditions. That kind of person is qualified to receive bhakti. And what would they understand? The understanding would be they won't think just like the river goes into the ocean and everything becomes null and void, or everything becomes one. No, Srila Prabhupada explains how if you go deeper in the ocean, you can see there are so many kinds of different varieties, different animals or fish or different things, different living creatures under the water living. And that's a different atmosphere. A human being cannot live in that kind of atmosphere. But because these creatures, they have a suitable body to live in that atmosphere, so they are able to survive under the water. But we may not survive for too long if we try to do that. Similarly, we can understand there are different kinds of bodies, bodies with much better facilities, much better qualities, and there are different dimensions, different realms, different planets where one can exist getting such a body. So Lord Brahma, he's describing how he got to see the Lord and he got to understand what's going on. Because everyone is naturally curious, they want to know what is what. So there is so much information these days, but like they say, there is not a lot of useful information to help actually understand what's going on. So for that we have to read books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which clarifies these things. Because being born in India, for me, I was like, there was so much confusion. There are so many gods. Who is who? There should be someone who is like, the top guy. Like if you go to some organization or even someone's house, some friend's place, then there is someone who is the proprietor of the place. So it's interesting how coming to the whole creation, we don't try to find out, who is the proprietor. But by studying these texts, we can understand what's the proper understanding of God, and even different facilities, different types of bodies one can get, because we see there are so many health centers out there, yoga centers, so many different facilities to keep in good health. But then here we see what's the actual way of keeping good health. Another point is Srila Prabhupada, he mentions that the airplanes, and he mentions even carriages. So I was thinking there are so many pastimes in Bhagavatam where we see a Vaikuntha plane comes and some devotee boards it and they take off. So I was thinking more, which is kind of more in line with this pastime here, is about Dhruva Maharaj, how the Vaikuntha plane came for him. And there, I was just reading, I'll read maybe one or two texts here. It gives like a beautiful description of the residents, since here we are studying that too. So it says, this is 4:12:19, if someone wants to look it up later. I'll just read the translation. As soon as the symptoms of his liberation were manifest, he saw a very beautiful airplane coming down from the sky, as if the brilliant full moon were coming down, illuminating all the 10 directions. Dhruva Maharaj saw two very beautiful associates of Lord Vishnu in the plane. They had 4 hands and a blackish bodily luster. They were very youthful, and their eyes were just like reddish lotus flowers. They had clubs in their hands, and they were dressed in very attractive garments with helmets, and were decorated with necklaces, bracelets, and earrings. So there are so many pastimes in Bhagavatam we can see where there is like a detailed description. I was remembering reading about Sukadeva Goswami. If you read about his bodily features, there it mentions he looks almost like Krishna. Even the color of his body is same like Krishna. So the devotees also have all these transcendental features, and when we read them, we can get to know them, we can associate with them, and it's there, so we get to know how it looks like on the other side. Because this, if you remember this pastime of how Nanda Maharaj, he was taken by the servant of Varuna Dev. So this was after Govardhan Puja. Govardhan Puja was on the 8th day, I think. And then after that it was Ekadasi. And then on the morning of the Dwadasi, Nanda Maharaj, he went to take bath in the river, but according to the rules and regulations, it was just a little bit too early. And so one of the servants of Varuna Dev, he took Nanda Maharaj to Varuna Dev. And then Nanda Maharaj's friends, straight away, they started calling out, Krishna, Balaram. So Srila Prabhupada mentions there, just like a child, a child's only shelter when they feel some fear or danger, they call out to their parents. So he mentions that devotees, especially the residents of Vrindavan, when they feel fear or danger, straight away the only thing comes to them is Krishna, Balaram. So we can see for ourselves how much we are able to do when we are in difficult situation. The more we are able to do that, we can see we are making some progress. But here they called out, and Krishna and Balaram knew straight away. So they went to Varunadev, and there Varunadev receives Krishna and Balaram very nicely, offers worship, and he actually apologizes. I'm sorry, my servant, he's a fool. He don't know who he has brought, and but I apologize for his mistake. And then he offers beautiful prayers, and he says actually that I know possessing all these watery bodies is not a big opulence, but everything I have, it has become more meaningful. My life has become successful because you have appeared here. By your presence, it has become valuable. And I have become very fortunate just by having your presence here. So he says many prayers, but then Krishna and Balaram, the interesting part is when they bring Nanda Maharaj back to his friends. So his friends ask Nanda Maharaj, what happened there? Tell us what exactly went on. How did Krishna and Balaram bring you back? And then Nanda Maharaj, he told them how they offered great respect. Oh yeah, the residents, they were thinking, did they think he is God or what happened? Like how did they release you? So Nanda Maharaj, he mentions that he's our child. He's not God. But then he says that they offered him great respect, like you offer to a great person, and we came back. And then Krishna, seeing them talk in that way, he decides, okay, it's time to do some action here. So he took them to Brahmahrad, where at the bank of the Yamuna, where Akrura, he got to see he was revealed the spiritual world by Krishna. So he took all the residents with Nanda Maharaj over there, and he gave them full view. What do they say, like the 360? So they gave him, he showed them the full cosmic view of spiritual planets. But the interesting thing was, how did the residents respond? They were like, oh, there is Krishna there. And it just looks like same like our Vrindavan. That was their vision. That was their feeling, seeing the whole thing. So Krishna was actually, Srila Prabhupada mentions that Krishna was actually revealing their good fortune to them. He was indicating to them, look, you already have. You're already there, So the point to understand is, like Krishna explained in this text of Brahma Bhuta in Bhagavad Gita, and in the next text, he explains what happens when one gets bhakti. Then they enter the kingdom of God. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvata tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tad anantaram. So, vishate tad anantaram. Such person who has developed that loving devotional consciousness, Krishna consciousness, spiritual consciousness, that kind of person can enter these kingdoms, these spiritual planets. So we have to practice penance like Brahma did. Of course, our penance is not same what Brahma had to do. So we know what our penance is, and we have to do that. How? With in the text 22, it's explained Krishna was pleased by Brahma's penance because he performed it with a submissive attitude, And he performed it as he was told by the Lord. So these are interesting points. We have to understand what is our penance, and we have to do it as it is prescribed to us, not however we think or however we feel. Um, yeah, and then by following with a fixed concentration of mind, that was another point. Um, so we will see the more we are fixed, the more we are, or the less we are distracted by other things, the more we will be able to progress and get a deeper realization on all these uh, details of the spiritual reality. So I would I just want to share this one more analogy. I really like these analogies. They help me understand things so easily. This one is in the text 55 of the 18th chapter of the Gita, referring about the same misconception of becoming one. So Srila Prabhupada, he gives this analogy of a green bird entering a green tree. So he's saying that the bird doesn't go to the tree to become one with the tree. There are fruits. The bird goes to enjoy the fruits. So similarly, the living entities, they also want to enjoy the variety. But that variety is not there if we just get to the Brahman understanding or Brahman realization, because there is no exchange of service there. So if the exchange of service is not there, the pleasure, the ananda will not be there. That's why we have to come to Paramatma and then Bhagavan realization. Because when we get to the Bhagavan realization, then that's when the devotional service fully manifests. And that's when one gets to experience this pleasure that the pure devotees experience. So, yeah, I think I mentioned few things, but it would be nice if the devotees, they want to share their realizations on these texts, because there are so many things. I don't know if I was able to cover all. All right. Savas Prabhu has something.
Thank you, Prabhu, for a nice class.
Hare
I just,
Krishna.
just a comment when you that read that purport on the 13th text there. I thought what was really amazing is that in that particular purport, Papa describes a particular, um, you know, world that we're completely unaware of
Yeah.
in terms of how we live in this world. We have no conception of this. So I thought it was pretty stunning to be able to hear a description of living entities, that wear certain kind of jewelries and gold, and they live in a place where it's illumination, and their own bodies create that illumination. And I thought that was pretty significant because in the purport, I think Srila Prabhupada said also that this misunderstanding is due to a lack of knowledge, a poor fund of knowledge. So, I think it's really amazing that we're sitting here and we're hearing this, but I wonder how many of us are grasping
Yeah.
that there's this other reality, which is real reality, and what we're experiencing here is the real, is just the most negative thing that one can experience in terms of birth, death, old age, and disease. And here we're hearing about the Vaikuntha planets, where there's no such thing as birth, death, disease. There's no time factor.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like thinking how beautiful these purports are, and how Prabhupada is giving us a window into the spiritual world through the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu. I was actually thinking about Srila Prabhupada's journey to America and different realizations he had on on the board at Jaladuta. And one of that is, I think I read it in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. So on the ship, when he had the heart attack, then he had this uh, revelation of the Goswamis and of Krishna, like helping the ship and kind of reassuring him, "Don't worry, everything should be fine." And after that, actually, after that revelation, Srila Prabhupada, he actually celebrated Janmashtami on the ship, and he cooked some prasadam, distributed to the captain and other people on the ship. So I think that was pretty amazing. Like some person, he just had heart attack and he's thinking of celebrating Janmashtami. And how many people would do that? They would generally, people are just like so under fear, even going through small sicknesses. And what to talk about heart attacks and all these things. Sometimes I meet people, they have been through different kinds of surgery, and I can see like how much fear they have of death. But here we see one person who who is not concerned with that, who is totally thinking of something else. His consciousness is so different. So, yeah, it was interesting you mentioned that how where our consciousness is, we get distracted by small things, like even during japa or even in class, like we see sometimes um, when Maharaj was joking like that, that Nidra Devi, she comes and overtakes some devotee. So we are influenced in so many different ways, but the beautiful thing is once we start practicing, we can see gradually we start to become free from all these five kinds of material conditions that are imposed on living entities. So it's very beautiful. One can personally experience the results of the practice. And that's what I think personally, that's what gives us inspiration to keep going, keep doing it. Because you see, like materially, people, they have bad experiences, but they still keep going back to the same work every day, dealing with the same people, dealing with same kind of problems they have. And of course, they try to find solutions this way and that way. But so many times we hear from people, what to do. They just accept however things are. That's the best they do. But then in Bhakti Yoga, we see that's not the best. There are so many ways of uh, dealing with the situation and actually transcending. Yes, Prabhu, Shri Maharaj.
Thank you, Prabhu. Very nice class. Just like a comment on what Savas Prabhu was saying. For myself, I always understood when I read the books, this is what kind of hit me most, is that one of our purposes in ISKCON is to recreate that as far as we're capable within the material world, to recreate that spiritual atmosphere, that beautiful